19th century was characterized by its rampant infectious diseases influenza, tuberculosis, and smallpox. Death was all around. With the overwhelming mysteries that come with the newly industrialized society and developing scientific world, the Victorians decided to reflect their struggle through their art, and it's what we know today as Gothic literature.
Hi, my name is Kaylee Rios, and I'm doing this video essay to explain how Gothic literature is still influencing our ideas about death today. Now, just like the Victorians, there's still a lot of uncertainty about the dying process in contemporary times. We can ask ourselves several questions like, will there be an afterlife? Will I be completely non-existent? Is there going to be suffering at the end? And actually, all of these questions rev up a lot of people's death anxiety. It's important to realize why Gothic literature was written in response to their uncertainties, and how this has then shifted to contemporary horror media, and how contemporary horror media is actually increasing the fear of death. As I stated, Gothic literature was crafted for Victorians to make sense of all the uncertainties surrounding them, like death and scientific progression.
Think about the prime example of Mary Shelley's Gothic novel Frankenstein. We think about an obsessive, mysterious scientist doing work putting together dead body parts. But Dr. Frankenstein was not aware of what would become of his work. With our better understanding of many scientific topics today in comparison to the Victorians, this whole mad scientist thing is still a perfect horror trope, especially when we can make them intentionally evil. Scientists doing odd experimentation, no matter how brutal, is a lot scarier than something that's on accident.
Throughout this video essay, we're going to analyze how this gruesomeness surrounding science has actually amplified the fear of death. There are numerous connections between Gothic literature and contemporary horror media, and it led me to ask a few research questions.
This included questions such as, what Gothic literature themes are present in a horror series? What are the emotions surrounding death? How are technoscientific themes represented? And what are the emotions surrounding the technoscience at hand?
Throughout this video essay, we're going to be looking at a show I'm sure a lot of you know called American Horror Story. And for those who are unfamiliar, essentially each season has a distinct storyline. And I chose this show to analyze for this video essay because I remembered a couple of the seasons having a lot of very clear Gothic attributes.
This included things like the settings being dark and gloomy with Gothic architecture, or Gothic creatures showing up like vampires.
I chose 3 different episodes of 3 distinct seasons from American Horror Story, and the way I went about this was by reading the Wikipedia synopsis for each individual season, as well as each episode. And I sort of just chose episodes that mentioned a lot of Gothic tropes or had a lot of the attributes I just discussed.
The 3 seasons I landed on included Season 1, Murder House, which is a story of a family who moves into a restored mansion completely unaware that it's haunted by the ghosts of people who used to live there. Season 2, Asylum. This season takes place in a mental facility named Briarcliff Manor, and it delves into the dark history of the Catholic Church and reflects ideas of the mad scientist running an operation of evil. And lastly, I chose Season 5, Hotel, the story of Hotel Cortez, which is a building which is overcome with paranormal activity. Gothic creatures are persistent throughout the season and terrorize the hotel's guests.
Since the interest of my analysis is to look at how death is portrayed in contemporary horror media, I devised a coding tool in order to collect data.
I chose 3 popular Gothic themes to determine whether they were absent in the episode, denoted by the number 0, or if they were present, which was denoted by the number 1. First, let's look at the theme of life versus death, which was present in all 9 episodes.
Besides measuring the physical technicalities of the dying process, there hasn't been a lot of scientific progression in terms of distinguishing what it means to be alive versus dead.
We can see this blurred line in Season 1, Murder House, as the dead walk amongst the living. For example, Mora, the mansion's maid, can be seen in both her younger and older form throughout the season.
These arbitrary distinctions can also be connected to the Gothic theme of the natural versus the supernatural, which was present in 7 of the 9 American Horror Story episodes. And this connection isn't really surprising when you think about both the Victorians and us in the present day, and how both of our societies have a lot of uncertainties about the afterlife. The really important thing to consider is how the supernatural is represented, and we can see clearly that in American Horror Story, it's as evil.
For example, the addiction demon in Hotel is a human figure who sexually assaults and haunts residents. There's something to be said about these cruel acts being committed by a monster who looks pretty human. Davison states, "These idioms, matters of style, prioritize dark, brooding melancholy, the language of sentimentality, the troublesome logic of the uncanny, and an obsessive but uneasy familiarity with death. But why might we associate human death with evil? Christian orthodoxy undertones.
The theme of Christian orthodoxy was present in 5 of 9 of the episodes, and with so few shifts in our knowledge over time regarding dying and the afterlife, religion can be explored in these contemporary horror media forms.
This was mainly evident in the season Asylum, where the entire mental facility is ran by Catholic nuns and priests who commit inhumane acts against the patients, such as starvation and beatings.
Now let's take a look at the characters acting out these themes within this series at a deeper level. I mentioned Frankenstein earlier in this video essay, and being one of the most influential Gothic stories, it's no surprise that it makes an appearance in American Horror Story.
Dr. Charles Montgomery in Murder House represented Dr. Frankenstein by sewing his deceased child back together in hopes of resurrection. I know. But one of the main undertones of Gothic literature is that notion of human monstrosity, and they're often scientists. These scientists walking around in our everyday lives can actually be hidden monsters.
So if contemporary horror is attaching all of these terrifying negative emotions around dying, it makes sense why it would further anxiety about death.
In another aspect of my code, I collected data regarding how death was represented. 0 means death was not mentioned. 1 meant a small amount of death occurred. 2 meant a lot of death occurred. And 3 meant that a lot of death occurred and a cultural ritual preceded, such as cremation or burial. 6 out of 9 episodes scored a 2, and 3 out of 9 scored a 3. So it goes to show that there was not a single episode in this series where death was not a major theme. One of the most horrifying examples of this was Mr. March of Hotel, who brutally murdered over 250 residents. He was the original founder and builder of the hotel, and he included secret chutes in its construction where he planned to send down the bodies. That's pretty disgusting, and let's look at why all these people are so terrifying throughout the series. These Gothic figures can amplify the fear of death strongly through their use of technoscientific themes such as transhumanism. Transhumanism involves the idea of scientific technology used to reach immortality. The idea of immortality is uncomfortable in itself because we are disturbing the natural order, but this will make more sense when we discuss biotechnology. Biotechnology is defined by technology utilizing biological systems for scientific advancement. Going back to Dr. Arden in Asylum, he basically injects patients with a vaccine that destroys their body, eventually leading to death. He essentially believes his patients are human scum. As a viewer, this constructs the scientist as a monster.
All of these familiar scientific tropes I'm talking about were not done on accident. They're utilized by the creators of the series in order to make the show more realistic, more familiar, and therefore more terrifying.
These technoscientific themes I mentioned were not once represented in a positive light. I ranked technoscientific representation on a 0 to 3 scale, 0 being the themes were not present, 1 being an optimistic innovation, 2 a destructive innovation, and 3 an innovation that the scientists viewed as optimistic but most other characters viewed as destructive. 6 out of 9 of the episodes scored a 2, and 3 out of 9 scored a 3. We can see parallels with the previous scale when we look at the emotions surrounding technoscience. On a 1 through 4 scale, with 1 being overall optimism, 2 being split between optimistic and wary, 3 being mostly wariness and fear, and 4 being extreme fear, it was evident that the most popular score was a 4, extreme fear. When science and technology are presented as a weapon of murder, it is natural to be fearful. These are tools that are supposed to be advancing human knowledge, but instead it's being weaponized.
So why should we even care about all of this? American Horror Story is a wildly popular television series. It has millions of viewers every season. And coincidentally, a lot of those viewers consist of people in their late teens to early 40s. This is a very formative period of life where death starts occurring a lot more often for many people. Now, literature is generally considered a solidified art form, but I don't think a lot of people have thought about horror television in the same way. But think about all the visual and auditory aspects that can go into a television series in comparison to a book. It can make it a lot more realistic, a lot more familiar, and a lot more gruesome. And this is why people have a lot of revved up anxiety about death when they consume these shows. It's important to make the realistic separation between what realistic common deaths look like and horror television. We have to remember that just like Gothic literature, horror television is art and it's dramatized. And it makes sense why this is. It's eye-catching, it's entertaining, and a lot of people like to consume this content. but we cannot let it get in the way of our anxiety and death acceptance journey.
We have to remember that art responds to our natural human anxieties, and that's why Gothic literature was written and this horror show was made. Don't let these anxieties overcome you. Realistically, I don't think Dr. Arden is out to get any of us. Death is not something that we have to be scared of, and when we all realize this, we can have a lot more comfortable, productive conversations about it.